the fire that changed me. I was a normal boy with a normal life. I lived in a small town with my family. My parents loved me, and I had many friends. I played outside every day and laughed a lot. My life was simple and happy. I never thought about bad things. I never worried about the future. Every morning I woke up with a smile. Every night I went to bed feeling safe. My world was small, but it was warm and full of love. One summer afternoon, everything changed. I was at home reading a book. The sun was bright and the air was hot. The window was open and I could hear birds singing outside. My mother was in the kitchen, cooking. The smell of food filled the house. Everything felt normal. Everything felt right. But then I smelled something different. It was smoke. At first I thought it came from outside. Maybe someone was burning leaves. But then the smell got stronger. It filled my nose and made my eyes water. I put down my book and stood up. That was when I heard my mother scream. My heart started to beat fast. I ran to the kitchen. Flames were everywhere. The fire was big and it moved fast. It climbed up the walls and spread to the ceiling. The heat was strong. The air was thick with smoke. I could not see well. I could not breathe well. My mother shouted my name again. I wanted to run to her, but I could not move. My legs felt heavy. My body felt weak. I turned to run away, but the fire was all around me. It was in front of me, behind me, and above me. I felt trapped. My heart pounded in my chest. The heat burned my skin. My face felt hot. My hands felt hot. My whole body hurt. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. Then something heavy fell near me. Sparks flew in the air. The fire touched my face. The pain was like nothing I had ever felt before. It was sharp, deep, and endless. I closed my eyes. Everything turned black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. The room was white. The bed was soft. Machines beeped around me. My mother sat next to me. Her face was pale and her eyes were red. She held my hand and smiled. "You are safe now," she said. Her voice was kind, but I saw sadness in her eyes. I felt pain all over my face. It hurt to move. It hurt to breathe. I lifted my hand to touch my skin. It felt rough. It felt strange. It did not feel like my face. Days passed and I learned the truth. My face was burned in the fire. The doctors did their best, but they could not make my face the same again. They said I was lucky to be alive, but when I looked in the mirror, I did not feel lucky. I did not know the person staring back at me. My skin was not smooth anymore. It was red and uneven. One of my eyes did not open fully. My lips looked different. I turned away from the mirror. I did not want to see myself. I thought my friends would help me. I thought they would still like me. But when I went home, everything was different. People looked at me with wide eyes. Some turned away. Some whispered. My friends did not play with me anymore. They were afraid of me. They did not say it, but I could see it in their eyes. When I walked near them, they stepped back. When I talked, they looked at the ground. At school, it was worse. Children pointed at me. Some laughed and some ran away. They called me names. They said I looked scary. They said I was a monster. I wanted to cry, but I did not. I wanted to hide, but I could not. Every day was hard, and every night I asked myself, why did this happen to me? I stopped looking in the mirror. I did not want to see my face. I did not want to see the scars. Every time I looked, I felt different. I was not the same boy anymore. Before the fire, I was happy. I was normal. Now I felt like a stranger in my own body. My skin felt tight. My face felt heavy. My reflection reminded me of the pain. So I turned away. At school, I walked alone. My old friends did not talk to me. They did not sit with me. When I entered a room, people became quiet. Some stared, some looked away. A few laughed. I heard their whispers. They thought I could not hear, but I did. He looks scary. He is a monster. Don't go near him. Their words hurt more than the fire. I tried to be strong. I tried to ignore them, but every day was the same. In the classroom, no one sat next to me. At lunch, I ate alone. During playtime, I stood in the corner. The teachers were kind, but they could not change the way the other kids saw me. I wanted to ask, why do you fear me? But I already knew the answer. My face had changed, and that was all they could see. At home I felt safe, but I was not happy. My parents loved me, but they looked at me with sad eyes. My mother tried to hide it, but I saw the tears when she thought I wasn't looking. My father spoke less. He worked late and came home tired. I knew they wanted to help me. I knew they cared, but no one could change what had happened. One evening, I sat in my room, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the fire. I thought about my old life. I wanted to go back. I wanted to be the boy I was before. But no matter how much I wished, I could not change the past. My face was different now. My life was different, and I had to find a way to live with it. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Nothing changed. I walked to school alone. I sat in class alone. I went home alone. Every day felt the same. I tried to smile, but it felt strange on my face. I tried to talk, but my voice felt weak. No one listened. No one cared. I was there, but I was invisible. One afternoon, I was walking home when a boy from my class ran past me. He stopped and looked back. His eyes were wide with fear. Then he turned and ran again. I heard his voice as he shouted to his friends. I saw the monster. The others laughed. I stood there, frozen. My heart felt heavy. I was not a monster. I was just a boy. But to them, my face was all that mattered. That night, I sat in front of the mirror. I forced myself to look. My scars were still there. My skin was still rough. But my eyes were the same. My hands were the same. My heart was the same. I was still me. I took a deep breath and told myself, "You are more than your face." But the words felt empty. The next day at school, something different happened. A girl in my class dropped her books. Papers flew everywhere. No one helped her. Everyone just walked past. I bent down and picked up the books. When I gave them to her, she looked at me. She did not smile. She did not speak, but she did not look away in fear. She took the books and nodded. It was a small moment, but it felt big. That evening, I thought about the girl. Maybe not everyone was afraid. Maybe someone could see me for who I was. Maybe I was not as alone as I thought. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, I felt a small light inside me. It was not much, but it was something. The next morning, I walked into the classroom and saw the same girl. She was sitting at her desk, reading. I wanted to say something, but the words stayed in my throat. I was afraid she would change her mind. Maybe she was only kind because no one else was watching. I sat in my seat and looked down at my book, but a small part of me hoped that she was different. At lunch, I sat alone, as always. I picked at my food, not really hungry. Then I heard footsteps. I looked up and saw her standing there. She held her tray and hesitated for a moment. Then she sat down across from me. My heart started to beat fast. No one had sat with me in a long time. I waited for her to speak, but she just ate her food. It felt strange, but it also felt nice. After a while, she looked at me and said, "Your face doesn't scare me." Her voice was calm. She was not joking. She was not making fun of me. I did not know what to say. I wanted to thank her, but I could not find the words. Instead, I just nodded. We sat in silence, but it was not the same silence I was used to. This time, it did not feel lonely. That afternoon, I walked home with a different feeling in my heart. I had spent months thinking no one would ever talk to me again. I thought I would always be alone. But today, someone sat with me. Someone spoke to me. Maybe it was only one person, but it was enough to change something inside me. For the first time in months, I felt like a real person again. Not a monster, not someone to fear, just a boy. I still had my scars. I still had my pain. But maybe, just maybe, I also had a chance to be happy again. The next day, I walked into class feeling different. I was still nervous, but I was not as afraid. I sat in my usual seat and glanced at the girl. She was reading again. I wondered if she would sit with me at lunch. Maybe yesterday was just a one-time thing. Maybe she only sat with me because she felt sorry for me. The doubt crept into my mind, but I pushed it away. I wanted to believe that she meant it. At lunch, I sat in my usual spot, waiting. My heart beat fast as I saw her walking toward me. She did not stop. She did not hesitate. She sat down across from me, just like before. This time, I spoke first. "Thank you for sitting with me." My voice was quiet, but she heard me. She smiled a little and nodded. "You don't have to thank me," she said. "You're not as scary as they think." Her words felt like sunlight after a long storm. For the first time in months, I had a real conversation. We talked about small things, our favourite subjects, books we liked, and the teachers at school. I was careful with my words, afraid of saying the wrong thing, but she never looked away. She listened. She treated me like a normal person. It felt strange, but it also felt good. After school, I walked home with a lighter heart. I did not look at the ground as I usually did. I kept my head up. The sun felt warm on my skin. The world looked a little brighter. I knew one person's kindness would not change everything overnight, but it was a start. It was more than I had before. At home, my mother noticed the change. "You look different today," she said. I did not know how to explain it. I just shrugged and said it was a good day. She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled back. The sadness in her eyes faded just a little. Maybe she had been waiting for this moment as much as I had. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the girl. She did not see my face the way others did. She saw more. I wondered why she was different. Why did she not fear me? Why did she not laugh? I wanted to ask, but I was afraid. What if I asked and she changed her mind? I decided to wait. For now, it was enough that she was there. The next morning, I did something I had not done in months. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my face. The scars were still there. The damage was still real. But for the first time, I did not turn away. I did not feel like a monster. I touched my face gently and whispered, "You are more than this." And this time I almost believed it. The next few days felt different. I still heard whispers when I walked down the halls. I still saw children looking away when they passed me. But something had changed. The words did not cut as deep. The stares did not feel as heavy. I had something stronger than their fear now. I had a friend. She sat with me every day at lunch. We talked about small things, but those small things felt big to me. No one had spoken to me like that in a long time. I learned that her name was Lily. She liked drawing and reading mystery books. She wanted to be a writer one day. I told her I liked stories too, but I never thought I could write one myself. "Anyone can tell a story," she said. "Even you." Her words stayed in my mind long after she said them. One afternoon, a boy from our class walked past our table. He stopped and stared at us. "Why are you sitting with him?" he asked Lily. His voice was full of confusion, maybe even disgust. My hands curled into fists under the table. I waited for Lily to look away, to feel embarrassed, to leave, but she didn't. She looked right at him and said, "Because he's my friend." The boy blinked, unsure how to respond. Then he just shrugged and walked away. I sat there, stunned. No one had ever called me their friend before. That night, I lay awake in bed, thinking about what she had said. A friend. The word felt strange, but it also felt warm. It was something I never thought I would have again. For so long, I believed my scars had taken everything from me. But maybe they hadn't taken everything. Maybe they hadn't taken my chance to be happy. The next morning, I walked to school with my head a little higher. The whispers were still there. The stares had not disappeared. But now I had a reason to keep going. I had someone who saw me for who I really was, and for the first time in a long time, I believed that was enough. One afternoon, as we walked home from school, Lily looked at me and smiled. "I think you should write a story," she said. I shook my head. "I don't know how," she laughed. "You don't need to know. Just write what you feel." I thought about it. Maybe I could write. Maybe I could tell my story. Not the story of my scars, but the story of who I was beneath them. That night, I sat at my desk, a blank page in front of me. I picked up my pencil, hesitated for a moment, then wrote my first words. Once, there was a boy who thought he was invisible. But one day, someone saw him. The words felt right. They felt true. And for the first time in a long time, I did not feel alone.